and so that people who weren't able to be on with us tonight could listen at another time, is we're going to kind of review. We've got some mini presentations scheduled in leading up to Earth Day, which is a couple months off. And we thought, you know, better start planning now. We got to get our ducks in order here for this to happen. So we've got several volunteers who will tell us some things that they're doing at their temples, and we'll encourage people to do those kinds of activities and or perhaps join a climate strike in their community. So we'll do a little brainstorming after the presentations and see if it helps you think of some additional ideas. So I'm going to mute myself, and I would encourage others to do that. We're going to give each of the presenters about 5 minutes to do that, to do their presentation, and maybe a minute after each presentation for a short Q&A. And then after everybody's done the presentation, we'll go ahead and do some brainstorming. Maybe some of you will volunteer to be test cases to see what we can brainstorm together at your temple. So I'm going to go ahead and Joan, I've got you on first. I don't know if you wanted to unmute yourself perhaps and tell us a little bit about what you are planning at Temple Israel for creating a Green Shabbat.
I'll be happy to talk about the Green Shabbat. I'm trying to enlist one of our, for lack of a better word, youngins to join us for part of the call, but this is our 5th Green Shabbat, and it doesn't have a particular relationship to Earth Day, except to the extent that in the past, our Green Shabbats have been at least in April to make it as close to Earth Day and certainly as close to Passover as possible. But this year we were very fortunate to have John Kerry agree to speak at our temple. We were extremely fortunate because by a wonderful stroke of luck or circumstance, his brother is a congregant at our temple. His brother Cam Kerry and his wife Kathy Weinman are congregants, and so they were able to get John Kerry involved, and that clearly became a matter of his schedule versus ours. But planning Green Shabbats in general, I'm gonna just do a very quick thumbnail, and as with everything we talk about, I'm happily available by any means, phone, email, text, meetings if you're in Boston or Lexington, environs about any of this. But I think in general, Green Shabbats are a wonderful way to really raise congregational awareness, to cement or otherwise strengthen the clergy's commitment, and to really allow the Green Team or whatever congregants are involved in sustainability efforts to be involved in the planning of a service. I think that ideally, every Shabbat would be a Green Shabbat, and that's certainly our goal. You know, the old, gee, we want to be out of business in the Green Shabbats and have it a 52-week-a-year Shabbat, but that's not the reality, at least not yet. So in terms of planning Green Shabbats, clearly the number one thing, as with everything, is to get the clergy on board, and that would include senior staff, because getting a date is important. And in the best of all possible worlds, you would, be within 2 to 3 weeks of Passover, not too close because people travel, but not too far away. But it can be any time. It can be particularly around any harvest holiday or any time that works for your congregation. Get the clergy on board, get a date on the calendar. Green Team then works with, again, whoever the clergy that are liaisons or whatever members of the congregational leadership are going to be involved in the planning, to talk about whether there will be a speaker either from within the congregation or outside the congregation. We've had both, and both work well. Just for what it's worth, I don't know if Susan's on the line, but one of our, we are talent rich on our Green Team. I'm the most inexperienced and otherwise uninitiated in the green world, but most people on the Green Team are very skilled. And we could be, or the people on our Green Team could give talks at every single Green Shabbat and other green events. But as our rabbi once said, quote unquote, you cannot be a genius in your own house. So we've had 3 outside speakers and 2 internal speakers. And again, I think a balance is really nice because we do have wonderful talent, and it doesn't have to be scientists or policy people or biologists or anyone with an engineering degree. It just has to have people who are interested in sustainability and have something to share. And to the extent that your synagogue would like it to be tied to our sacred text, that's a very easy thing to do. So you get the date on the calendar, you plan it, you get the speaker. Ideally, it's going to be zero waste. So you work with the facilities folks and the catering or event management person. Our synagogue is really blessed because our cantor is so committed to environmental issues and work that he privately fundraised so we could be 100% compostable at every food-related event. So we don't have any trash in our own eggs or other food-related programs anymore. We have only compost bins, and everything we use, utensils, plates, cups, are all compostable. And finally, you urge the clergy, or if appropriate, the Green Team and anyone else working with those planning the service, work with the clergy to try to integrate other climate-related readings and even songs. Rabbi Shoshana Friedman of Temple Sinai in Brookline has written with her husband, Yotam Schachner, a really magnificent anthem for the climate movement called "The Tide is Rising," and so are we. There are many prayers, many readings. The Shalom Center under Rabbi Arthur Waskow's leadership. JCAN here in Boston under Rabbi Katie Allen's leadership. Hazon, and soon to be the Dayenu Center based in New York under Rabbi Jenny Rosen's leadership are all wonderful sources. Dayenu will be a wonderful source of liturgy, poetry, and many other resources. So, you know, that's about it. The quick footnote I'd like to add is that for the first time this year, it was suggested by our Green Team that we not get everybody whipped into a frenzy, motivated and hopefully inspired by John Kerry, and then kind of let them, you know, leave the temple, and by the time they're in the parking lot or even home, they forget about everything. So we're having a green marketplace. We have 16 organizations that are all single issue sustainability environmental organizations. None of them are sort of multifocal, even though intersectionality is important. And we're going to really try to capture the energy that the Green Shabbat, the Shabbat of Environmental Justice generates, and get people to sign up to volunteer, to get involved. You know, lowest level of helping, giving money, but it still matters. But we will report back at the next HGI meeting and let you know how it goes. It may be that people are tired and just want to schmooze or eat and schmooze, but we're hoping that this 16 organization green shook, if you will be able to direct some of the energy and motivation and hopefully capture it so that there can be more foot soldiers recruited for the, as John Kerry's organization is called, for the World War Zero. So again, happy to answer questions. Don't want to take more than my allotted time. Always happy to talk or email offline, but that's kind of the thumbnail, how to plan a green Shabbat. And this is our 5th, and we've refined and learned as we've gone along. Thanks,
Great.
Scott.
Great, thanks, Joan. I don't know if anybody has a question now, or we can certainly.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure, Judy. Go ahead, Judy. And then why don't you ask a question, and we'll go get Joan to answer, and then we'll come into your presentation next. I know Susan's got a time limit here, so we don't want to go too long, and we'll get back to more questions later.
Okay, 2 questions. How long is your or more than, how long is your service? How long is John Kerry going to speak for? And can you give us examples of some of the organizations that will be in the green marketplace?
Those are great questions. Very quickly, our service in general is a Kabbalat Shabbat. It starts at 6, is over by 7:15, 7:20. We expect that tomorrow night will probably go till 7:20, 7:30. We also, our Green Shabbat, by the way, all our Shabbats are live streamed. And if you go to Temple Israel Boston, there's the call out on the home page that says live stream, and you just go to Sanctuary tomorrow night at 6 or 6:05. John Kerry will probably speak for 20 to 25 minutes. I believe he's been allotted 20, and I don't know if that was a hard stop or a squishy Jewish stop. And I'm sorry, I forgot. Oh, the organizations. Wow. The organizations are, Susan Israel has 2 organizations, Climate Creatives and Rising Waters. We have Black Earth Compost. We have Urban Farming Institute. We have Jewish Climate Action Network, Boston Climate Action Network, Mass Climate Action Network. We have the Sierra Club. We have Mass Saves. We have Mass Saves is our state program that does energy audits. We have Speak for the Trees Boston. We have Elder Climate Action. We have, excuse me, I was cooking and I heard something. Hold on, honey, what are the other organizations?
Calisa will be there.
Yes, a lot. Oh, yes. Oops, sorry. Honey, I just set off the fire alarm, as we say. In, hold on.
Okay, well, maybe.
Sorry,
But maybe
we have 16 organizations. I will, after the call, send Scott the URL. And all of the organizations' logos and websites are on our webpage.
Joan.
And everyone can have a look at it. And we're also, Susan Israel and the Green Team are having a campaign to thank and honor our cantor who's retiring after 37 years.
Joan,
and Susan suggested we have pledge
hello,
postcards.
Joan. Sorry,
Hi.
I'm going to ask Judy. Joan, Susan's actually got an appointment. She asked me about leaving early. Judy,
Okay.
I wanted to check with you and see if Susan might go next, because I know she's got to get off the phone call a little bit early, and then
That's
we'll follow with you. Is that okay? And I'm
Yep.
gonna switch gears here, because Susan, I'm gonna turn over control to Susan for the screen share, because she's got a few things here. Let me see if I can do that here. Manage participants. And then I'm gonna, oh, that's not what I wanted. Huh. Let me see. Okay. Maybe I'll share with, well, I guess if I can find.
Maybe screen share, and how about if I try this?
Oops.
Whoops. Wrong one. Wrong screen.
Yeah, I hit the wrong one. Let me go back, and I'm gonna see if I can share yours. Make the host.
Thank you.
And then I'm gonna do it that way. You want to change? Yes. And so
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna change you to the host,
dinner
and then you
and-
can go and
dinner is
share
ready
your
if you want.
screen.
Oh,
There you
yeah.
go. Got it.
All right. And I don't have it on.
Can
full-
everyone else mute their line, please?
Well, I don't have this on full screen, but that's okay. Slideshow. From the beginning. Okay. There we go. So I'll be pretty quick. Climate Creatives is my organization, and basically what I do is art, public art, and art making exercises to help people engage emotionally and sort of more immediately with climate and sustainability issues. So public art and education campaigns are and participatory art making sessions are how we operate. The project that I'm presenting is Rising Waters, a very specific project. And I actually met Scott Lewis because I was working on this in Broward County, and he got in touch with me. So thank you all very much for letting me join the group. Rising Waters is marks future flood levels in the landscape to show people where flooding will be due to sea level rise and storms. And we've done over, we'll get to that later, but basically it's proved to be a very effective way to engage people, communicate the data, which is pretty complex, hard to understand, and pretty dry when it's on paper. People don't really relate to FEMA maps. And then it gets people on board and helps them really understand that they've got to get going. And we found that it's been highly effective. This was the first installation in Boston. You can see the lines on this old pier in East Boston looking across the harbor at Boston, downtown Boston. So you can see that there's basically no freeboard, and we're already, king tides are already flooding. I've done this remotely with groups as far as Hong Kong, where I went and I set them up to do an installation themselves. I did go and walk them through it when I was there, but it can be done remotely. And there are also extensions that can be done with all ages. So on the right is a picture of a workshop that we did with students in Hong Kong, helping them understand what sea level rise meant. And they made a responsive art project in teams. So this was all connected at multiple locations in Hong Kong. In Broward County, I did the installation at the Museum of Science and Discovery, and that was as a demonstration for, this is the sort of the standard installation method now with the lines, and it shows the dates right on them. And then there's a secondary way to do it, which is making fish so that if you don't have a structure to attach it to, for example, on the right was San Diego at a beach, on the left was also in Fort Lauderdale, you can make these fish flags which go directly in the ground. So the materials are really simple. I've kitted them up. They can also be sourced by the organization. And I have instructions and a train the trainer model. So at, there was a student summit with 800 students that Scott was part of putting together in Fort Lauderdale for Broward County. I trained students from 28 schools, but they'll be doing 30 installations for Earth Day 2020. So this train the trainer model is what I thought might be interesting to Higher Ground, where I can work with groups and show them how to do it, and then they can just take off and do it on their own. So the history of it, we've been a whole bunch of places. We're going to be in a whole bunch of places. The nice thing about this year is that it's tied together with, I'm on the planning committee for the UN World Oceans Week, and I'll be showing photographs of installations at different locations, including the UN, National Geographic in Times Square, maybe the Explorers Club, SciTech in New York, part of CUNY. And so whatever might be done before June could be photographed and included in this, and also included on our website. So already we have the 30 installations in Broward County. There's another 30 organizations in New Bedford who want to do a similar thing. There are groups in Hollywood that we're hoping I'll get down there and do and be part of Free RC's festival. And a lot of organizations are starting to come to me because I think that people see that it's highly effective. So for Higher Ground, what I'm thinking is I can do trainings on site. I could go to a city and train a whole, you know, there's sort of not that much of a limitation to how many people I could do a whole social hall at a temple, invite all the temples in the area, show up, show everybody how to do it. I can supply the kits, or I can supply the specifications for the materials. I can provide the help of figuring out where to put the lines, and then even do it in a train the trainer so that those people can train other trainers. We're also tying a do one thing pledge to it, which is still in process. So these are some of the ways that we tie together. Jewish students, Nifty, those are fantastic groups. And I think that that's it. So this is my contact information, and I'm happy to take questions. I don't know if that was so fast that it's not clear, or if it is clear what I'm doing.
Yeah, this is a good time, and just to add, you know, one or two things, Susan, and we had been communicating about this as something leading up to Earth Day, and I could just imagine that would be a great installation at a temple for Earth Day, but also, you know, Passover a couple weeks before, and the Red Sea or Reed Sea theme might very well work with that. And as you mentioned, there are events for Ocean Day afterwards and into the summer. So there are a whole bunch of different ways that groups, and I think maybe everybody except Gainesville on this call is in a coastal area. So this is a good audience, and Vancouver's in a good location for that as well. So, you know, that's worth thinking about. And Evan, I would encourage you to, you guys to consider that as a installation.
Could I get Susan's contact information? Because I don't see what you're seeing.
Yeah. I'm going to send this out later, and I'll send what she wrote on this
Okay.
everybody in
All
a
right, thank
follow-up email, and then I will have the link so that you can actually see what she presented as well. Does
All right,
anyone
I
have
appreciate
any
that.
questions for Susan?
No, I
Yeah,
actually,
I have
I'm
a
in charge of-
question. On the pledge one thing, do you give suggestions? And if so, what kinds of suggestions do you give? And
We do.
Can you mute the people on the phone? Because there's a lot of background noise.
I don't, let's see. Let's see. I don't know. Vera and Stephanie, I guess you heard those two were the ones calling in. Bob looks like he's already muted himself. So let me see if I can.
I think it stopped.
Okay.
So
All right, thank
yes, I have a list of suggestions. You can actually get to the Climate Creatives website. It might be on the resources page, but I do, and I kind of have low-hanging fruit, and then because people who are already committed, engaged, tend to know what to do. So I feel like it's more of an entry point for people. But you can see in the bottom left on the fish, one of the things the kids did was they wrote their ideas for what people can do on the fish before they installed them. So there are ways for the, sort of the full participation. And then we're still working on collecting that, sort of a way to collect people's commitments and show them on the website. The website is risingwaters.org. And so that's just, we're still filling in some of the pieces like the pledge. The other thing is you just gave me a great idea, Scott, that I could make a Red Sea version of this for Passover, because we've got the red line as the top line anyways. That would be kind of cool.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you put something together, please, let me know, and I'll send that out as well to everybody. But that, in the Jewish community writ large, I think that would be fun for people to know about something like that.
Yeah. And I will have to throw this out because we are looking for funding. So this all, unfortunately, I, can't afford to front this myself. But we're looking for funders. We're looking for sponsors. If you know of somebody who thinks this is a great project and you think that they have the bandwidth to support it, I would really appreciate any kind of referrals, because my hope is to get sponsors and then really be able to give this away at cost, because all the back end will be taken care of, or a big enough sponsor that it's just all free. My goal is to find enough sponsorship money to make this free, but we're just starting the campaign right now. And I do want to say thank you very much, Joan. That was a very lovely shout out. I know you were going to continue, and I actually got cut off my behalf, but thank you very much. It's been, so Joan and I've been at her, she has been fearlessly leading this green team, and I've had the great honor and pleasure of working on it with her. So thank you for the.
Thank you, Susan. And back at you, Susan. Thank you very much.
So that's it. I guess if you don't have any more questions, I'm happy to stick around for another couple of minutes if there are questions right now. Otherwise, anybody can email me or call me.
I have one question.
What is your?
This is John. Is Climate Creatives also working on projects and exhibits for congregations that aren't at sea level?
Oh yeah, we do tons of different things. We have an eat less meat thing. We do all sorts of stuff. And I'm local, so I'm in Newton.
Great.
So yeah, it's Susan at climatecreatives.com. Creatives is plural.
Thank you.
Or risingwaters.org. So yeah, I'd be happy to.
Climate Creative.
Great. Okay. Well, Susan, thank you so much for that. And again, we're recording this. So I'm hoping that we'll have some other viewers from our email list here in a later thing. But I appreciate you stopping by here, so to speak, and telling us a bit about some of your work here. And hopefully we'll get some interest from some of the congregations that are members of the group.
Fantastic. It was absolutely my pleasure, and I really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
Great, thanks. I don't know if you can share back on the control thing.
No, I got it. That's it. It's mine. Let's see. How do I do this?
Or maybe I can do it.
Here we go. I can go back to Oh, I think there's a stop sharing. Pause, share, stop, share.
Okay, there you
Got
got
it?
it. Yeah, indeed. Great,
Thanks,
thanks, Susan.
everybody. It was a pleasure.
Okay,
Bye.
all right, thanks so
Thank you,
much.
Susan.
Okay. Thanks, Joan. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Susan.
Great. All right, we got Judy up right now, so she was waiting patiently. Thank you, Judy, and very exciting to talk with her about her work mentoring some students who will be developing some Shabbat programming. So Joan started us off with descriptions of a green Shabbat, and perhaps that's the same thing that Judy will be doing in a way, and she will tell us a bit about that. And I think that's one of the exciting developments, and is to have the students involved in taking leadership roles on this. So thanks, Judy.
Well, thank you. So first I wanted to add that I forgot to mention when I introduced myself that I'm the co-leader of the Jewish Action Team, also with Citizens Climate Lobby. And if anyone has any questions about that, I'm always happy to answer those questions. So I live in San Diego, just north of San Diego, and we've been working for 7 or 8 years to get our synagogue more engaged on climate, and it's been very, very slow. But hopefully we have found the right direction now to move in. Our congregation, I'd say, is probably a lot more conservative than many of your congregations. So there's a little anxiety on the part of the clergy to touch anything that could be controversial. So what happened in our case that's turned out better than we could imagine, our youth director introduced us to a high school senior from the Temple who had expressed to him that she was very interested in learning more about climate change and already knew quite a bit. And my husband and I have been mentoring her for once a week or every other week for the last year, and learning a lot from her and her learning from us. And her final project is to put on a Climate Shabbat service on April 17th, coinciding with Earth Day. And we recruited a half a dozen 8th and 9th graders from our Temple program who are interested in also helping out. And so now we're the 8 or 9 of us are meeting weekly, and we're trying to find the balance between directing them and letting them create all of this, but they're very interested and very excited, and it's been a really great way to, I think, introduce the topic in what is maybe a more non-threatening way than if it came only from adults. So let me see. Yeah, I think those are the main points. If anyone has any questions, I would love to answer them.
When you said your congregation is conservative, is that
Politically.
But is it a reform congregation?
Oh.
It's a reform congregation, but politically, I mean, I don't know if it's half and half or 75-25. I just know that there are definitely Trump supporters and people who are, I don't even know if they're uncomfortable talking about climate. I just know that the clergy is worried that they'll be uncomfortable.
Judy, we heard Joan talk about a variety of different things that they do, and they put on some of these green Shabbat events. Have you come up with some things yet at this point that you are going to have as part of the service that are like what she said, or are you guys planning some different things, or what?
Well, I think we're still in the early stages, but I'm guessing most of you are familiar with the story about the vessels that cracked apart, and that we need to bring the light back together to repair the world. So we're going to do sort of a dramatic, theatrical take on that. My husband is making 5 or 6 props that will light up, that at the beginning it's going to be all dark and people are going to bring those in from all corners and it'll come together and form a globe. And then we're going to do things like putting a blanket over the globe to explain climate change. So that's what we have so far. In addition to that, we'll have the kids speak about the different prayers and how they relate to taking action. And I liked hearing about Joan's Temple and what they're doing during the Oneg, because we're just in the early stages of figuring out how to make sure this doesn't just end that night, but that people take some kind of action.
Hi, this is Joan. If it's okay, I didn't know if you were done, Judy. First of all, I'm so impressed that you got 9 teenagers. We have 4, and that number is not for lack of trying to get more. I also want to say that what we've heard from our teens over a long period now is that they really want, now again, this is the Sunrise Movement's manifesto and the climate strike movements as well. It's not individual teens, these are movement manifestos, but they want to be deciders. I don't like to quote George W. Bush, but they want to be in charge and they want the adults around them to support them and to, where appropriate, coordinate with them. But they've made it really clear that they're the drivers, and we respect that and honor it. And so, you know, we are very, I think, appropriately differential. I don't know if you've encountered that, but working with the Sunrise and climate movement people, we've been reminded gently that this is not our time. We do have these amazing 4 teens, and Judy, if you ever want to be in email touch with them or anyone, or perhaps I had asked them to jump on the call tonight, but it was too late and they all had plans. But we could arrange it another month, Scott, if that's appropriate, because they're extraordinary. The thing I mentioned is that, and I'm sure you've thought about this and all the people working on sustainability, but the environment and climate change are really separate. And when I go to temples where the rabbis are reluctant to talk about climate change, there's still no shortage, I remind them, of ways to talk about environment. And you start with Genesis, you know, it's ours to protect and preserve the earth. And if we don't, there will be no one to repair it. So there's so much in our holy text that gives any rabbi plenty from which to work. Even the Aleinu, there's a new version of the Aleinu in most Reformed prayer books. Some have even pasted it into the front left cover that says we are guardians of the earth. I don't know if that's the prime driver between or why URJ replaced the old Aleinu, but it talks about guardians of the earth. And our rabbis quite often really slow down and say we are guardians of the earth. It is ours to protect and preserve. You know, there will be no one behind us to repair it if we don't. So, and then the only other thing I wanted to mention, as I'm sure you found out, Judy, and others working with kids, is that kids are the best messengers. I mean, witness Greta, people from our congregation who've been to Madrid or Paris have said that she has bigger entourages and certainly a much larger media following than anyone else there, prime ministers, presidents, ambassadors, etc. But we've dreamt about trying to get our nursery school and kindergartners involved, and it just hasn't happened yet. Again, not for lack of trying, but we have this dream that if we got them to make pictures or posters or to otherwise get involved in even video messaging, we would have a home run, because who can say no to little kids? And so those were just some random thoughts based on your comment. But one thing we say when the young people come to our Green Team meetings, as the chair, I now have a wonderful co-chair, Jill Hahn, but when I was the sole chair and chaired everyone, I would say, we're here because of you. It's your future that we are really working hard to preserve and protect. So thank you for allowing us to be part of your movement and your struggle. It's our combined struggle, but we're here because of you. And I would always accord them the privilege of the first speaker after we did our check-in rounds. So really trying to honor them in a way that they deserve. So for what it's worth, thanks for listening.
Great. Any other questions for Judy and from any of our participants? Vera, are
Nope.
you? Okay.
I'm here. I'm listening. I'm
Okay,
listening.
very good.
Yeah, my temple is very small. We have about 130 families. We have a very small religious school. But I am co-chair of the Passover Seder and have been for the last 12 years. So I like the idea of getting the children involved in maybe involved in the climate change. In fact, we have a problem actually at our synagogue right now. We are using compostable products. However, Passover is a catered affair for the community. We serve about 115 people. And in years past, we've always had plastic utensils, plastic tablecloths. I mean, our plates are paper, but everything else is plastic. And we have told the congregation that we don't want to use plastic. So this is a conundrum for us right now.
Well, maybe.
Is there anyone?
I was going to suggest. I don't know if that's Stephanie who's on the. I've got a 954 number at the bottom of my.
Yes, that's me.
Stephanie, you may want to connect with Vera. Yeah, you may want to connect.
Sure.
Yeah.
You heard that about that.
What's her name? Stephanie?
Yeah, she's our
especially
expert.
for small. Yeah, I mean, it's no real expertise, especially for small congregations. We use everybody contributed their old metal utensils, and we have a tub at every event with soapy water, and I just take them home and put them in the dishwasher. So it's easy.
Okay, I'd like very much to have your last name and your contact information.
Sure. Scott, I don't know how we do that.
Yeah, I'll make a note and we'll pass that along at the end.
Okay.
Well, actually, I guess I have Ellen's number. Vera, we'll have to talk a little bit at the end of the call. Okay.
Okay.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I also encourage you to
Stephanie.
get onto the World Centric. Has no tree products now, and you can get a
World
discount for your temp. World Centric it's called, and they sell no tree products. And we use those because we don't have the kind of facility to wash dishes or anything like that.
We don't either.
The utensils are much easier. But World Centric sells no tree items, so we use their cups and plates. They're not too expensive, and you can get a discount through your temple.
Mm-hmm.
A 20% discount, which is significant.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add that for temples that have any way to shake the tree for money, hiring a composting company is terrific because they have wide latitude. Some of them will even take paper cups that are not, perfectly kosher, that have some of the wax liners. It's company by company, and in part dependent upon whether they're making other dirt that they'll give to your temple, or at least some of it in the spring, or whether they're making slurry for biofuel. But hiring a composter really has been the greatest thing because, again, we have no more trash. We also have found that once we started to educate the congregation about composting and our need to avoid plastics, single-use plastics, people became so mindful. And quite often I'll see people with a napkin and whatever they would have normally put on a plate, and they'll be using their fingers. And we've gone to those, for lack of a better word, spears. They look like a spoon and fork combination. You see them sometimes at cocktail parties, but they're a little longer and they're made out of bamboo and completely sustainable. I've urged going to just the large toothpicks, but of course there's concern, understandably, about kids playing, although plenty of kids go to events with those spears and no one, I don't think, has ever been hurt. But anyhow, I'm very happy to talk to anyone as well about switching to a 100% no waste event synagogue, because it's very gratifying to eliminate single-use plastics.
No, definitely.
Great. Well, thank you. I'm gonna share one thing, and then maybe we'll bring it back to some additional questions or discussion if anybody wants to volunteer to tell us that they're setting up something and how we might do a little brainstorming. But I thought, and I'm glad Joan touched on this, I'm gonna see if I can share my screen that just has Let's see. Oh, the resources. Yeah, I'll share that one. And then you can take a look. You know, I'm going to send this out actually, but I'm glad Joan touched on this with respect to the youth sort of taking the lead and actually kind of demanding that they run these climate strikes, which I think is really an interesting development. And, you know, certainly Sunrise and some of the other groups are doing that. And there's at the bottom of this page, you'll see a youth announced 3-day climate strike. That was just a press release, but this is kind of a coalition of different groups, including Sunrise and a whole bunch of other Extinction Rebellion and that sort of thing. And they sort of, there was a point at which we, you know, joined on, is HGI. There's a whole bunch of support groups and movement partners and adult partners and that sort of thing. So clearly, you know, as Joan, you know, sort of outlined, the youth are kind of running the strikes that week. So if you've got people, and Evan, I'll ask you about that, if you've got people in your community who want to participate in the strikes, basically you can go to one of these website links and then you sign up and people will get in touch with you. And I found, you know, I've looked at, for example, Sunrise, they've got a whole host of resources and videos about how you prepare for these strikes and how you bring in organizations and press releases. I mean, it's quite impressive. So anybody who's doing this for the first time and wants to get in touch with one of these groups, you know, if you're doing one in your community, you'll find an impressive array of support mechanisms out there for the youth to do these in your community. So, you know, I think there's some encouragement that adults can give, but I think it's exciting that the youth are doing these kinds of things. So again, I'll pass this along to people, you know, via email at the end. And let me see if I can get the screen back and let's see. Okay, so let's see. I don't know, let's see if I can get this going here. Oops. Okay. Okay, so now I'm back. Okay. All right, so do we have any volunteers who would, or if Evan, I don't know what you might be thinking at this point with Nifty, or I know there's some planning going on for Earth Day, or if you want to mention any of that, or you want some brainstorming with the crew that's on this phone call, or if anybody else, like John has something that they're doing in their congregation that he wants to brainstorm with this group. There's a lot of brain power in this group. So we want to make sure that everybody comes away with some good initial thoughts if they don't have some good planning already.
Yeah, well, my Nifty region has an event actually that starts on April 17th. And so that would be, you know, a great opportunity for us to have some really like climate centered programming. But the problem is that we don't have a lot of time on that day to actually like get into a big ordeal. You know, it's going to be like probably 45 minutes to an hour long service, like a Friday night service. And then there's going to be a dinner at camp. And then we'll have some sort of mixer or icebreaker game. And then it's going to be cabins in for the night. So I don't know if any of you have experience with like really light climate change programming, or like ideas for activities that would be short that we could incorporate outside of services.
So is this in an outside camp setting? Is that where you are?
Yeah, it's at like a URJ summer camp. This one's going to be at Camp Kalsman. But everybody's going to be arriving after dark. So outside spaces are not super accessible to us. But we do have all day on Saturday and the morning on Sunday. And I'm sure we'll have some sort of climate-ish programming to do with on one of those days. But yeah, I was just wondering if anybody had like experience with short and light climate change activities and stuff.
So is this, yeah, I'm a little confused also. This is Judy. This is a weekend event, and who's coming to it, and what's the theme of it, and what's your role in planning it?
Yeah, so this is a weekend event. It's a nifty event, so it's going to be high schoolers from grades 8 through 12. My role in planning it, I'm the programming vice president of my region, and so my role is to oversee and implement all of the programs and activities that we do. And so there is one person on our regional board whose job specifically is social action programming and social action type things. And so obviously this would be like made in collaboration with the person in that role, but you know, if there's like, you know, we're probably looking for something like 30 minutes at most to just like have to do on that day.
And what other kinds of events are the kids going to be doing, and how many kids will be there, and where are they coming from?
It's kids from all the way down in Idaho to all the way up in Vancouver. So we have a pretty wide geographic spread. In terms of how many, it's going to be probably somewhere between 100 and 150. And we're actually just going to start planning this weekend. So we don't have firm ideas on what is actually going to be like presented in terms of programs at the event. But, you know, having some sort of incorporation of Earth Day, I think would be really important, especially since our event does coincide with Earth Day. I
think we only have a few more minutes here, but Evan, I would be more than happy to talk with you and tell you things that we've done. Now may not be the time, but I'm happy to give you input on other things we've done with kids.
Yeah,
maybe.
awesome.
And ditto from Joan. I'm happy to talk with you. And, you know, a few really easy things are, I don't know what the camp's like, but if they would give you even a small plot of land and you all could plant a pollinator garden for half an hour, you know, all native plants are pollinator friendly. And then you could, you know, have kids take pictures of it and then go back to their respective synagogues and see if the synagogues would allow them to plant pollinator. You know, I think you said April, but I'm not sure what the weather's like in that area in April. But our teenage program has a lot of great activities. Another one is to divide everyone into groups and just give them a few questions about climate change and about sustainability, and then have one person report back, but some fairly deeper existential questions. And then the other very quick possibility is to, you know, this question that young people rightly ask us is, you know, what did you do when you found out about climate change? And, you know, to really riff on that in small groups and figure out how young people will get the adults in their lives and in a wider catchment as well to figure out how to change behaviors. Because I think when someone comes up to you who's young and says, what did you do when you found out about climate change? And, you know, the question is how to spread that question and to raise awareness by figuring out ways to do it either within a congregation or a school community or neighborhood. So just a few ideas. Happy to give you more offline if you just contact Scott for my information. It's Joan.
Yeah, I'll pass to you and Judy's email. I'll pass that along to Evan. And I would just add one thing, and these are great ideas that you guys have. You know, one of my, you know, quintessential Jewish experiences actually was summer camps up in North Carolina, Hendersonville area. So getting the youth out, you know, I mean, this is going to be Saturday morning maybe, for a service in the outdoors. I mean, if the weather's decent there, it's one of the great experiences you can have to connect students, youth with nature directly and understand its values, so that when we have these questions about climate change, people are vested in the earth and their relationship with it to do something. So just having that outside experience is a great way to celebrate, you know, Earth Weekend, as you might call it. So I think that's terrific that you guys are doing that stuff. And if there's anybody else that wants to send in some suggestions later, or talk with Evan or communicate with him, let me know. And I'm sure you guys have had those experiences at your temples or working with students that might work well for the kind of group that they're getting up there.
No, I'll just throw in quickly, I don't know, it is Shabbat, so you may be unplugged, but different videos that I would highly recommend, either watching Greta at the UN and having a conversation about it and finding out how many people know who she is, and if they don't know who she is, that they can learn about her. And then other short videos about climate change. This doesn't have a Jewish bent, but it has a faith bent. The climate scientist Catherine Hayhoe has a great YouTube series called Global Weirding, and the videos are all 5 to 8 minutes, and they're really easy to understand. So those are 2 other ideas.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for your ideas, and I'll try to follow up with you in the next couple weeks once we have a more clear idea of what we're doing. But yeah.
Great. All right. Any last questions for any? I guess we got Joan and Judy still on the phone call here. Any other comments or questions for our presenters this evening, or comments?
I think this is a great idea. That's my comment. I think it's wonderful that you started this, Scott. I applaud you.
Well, thanks. I think, you know, the idea that Joan, and just to follow up and see if we can have report backs on what people are doing and where things are headed, and maybe another speaker from Sunrise or just to fill us in would be great. So with that, anybody, maybe we'll give a final goodbye if there are no more questions.
Well, this is my, as Scott knows, my recurring plea. I am technophobic enough to really not like the tent and yammer. And we've had URJ representatives, RAC representatives on the call, and they understandably defend it. But I wonder if our little group can have a Google list, a Google group, because I find it very important to sort of just share resources soon after calls like this. Otherwise it all kind of disappears into the miasma. And so I don't know if anyone's technologically advanced enough to do it, but I'm not a tent yammer fan. Other people might be. Right. But it'd be great to be able to share resources without having poor Scott be the clearinghouse for everything. So that's my only final.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Joan. I'd be happy to create, you know, I've got a Google Drive, so I can just put a folder together for this group. And, you know, I mean, certainly, for example, Susan Israel had a bunch of stuff, and, you know, and anything you come up with that you want to save and would be appreciated, I'm sure. So I think we're just about 8 o'clock. Any last comments? Otherwise, we'll Thanks, everybody, and appreciate it. And we'll see.
Scott, I would just,
Sure.
I'm sorry, Stephanie, I would just make sure that stuff does get duplicated in the tent so that people outside our group also get a hold of these resources.
Good point.
Because they're
Good point.
great.
Okay.
You guys are such a great resource for everyone. So.
All right. Wonderful. So, well, thank you, everybody. And we'll
Thank
be
you.
in touch.
Scott.
Thank you.
And so Scott, do I say,
Yeah. Vera, are you still on?
yes, I wanted to talk to you if everyone
Sure.
else, when everyone else leaves.
Okay. Let me stop the recording part.